The sport of game fishing involves the pursuit and capture of certain species designated as game fish. These are mostly migratory pelagic fishes such as the marlin, tunas, kingfish, mackerel, wahoo, and several types of shark. An important aspect of successful game fishing involves a working knowledge of the equipment and tackle needed, as well as a grasp of the more common techniques of bait and lure presentation, fish fighting, tracing, and gaffing. This program aims to teach you the fundamentals of these subjects and help you on the road to enjoyable and productive fishing. Knot tying is one of the most basic skills of game fishing, yet insufficient attention to detail here will almost certainly render the rest of the process meaningless. Because of the very demanding nature of game fishing, game anglers are offered the option of using doubled lengths of line and/or traces at the working end of their tackle. The use and dimensions of these doubles and traces are clearly set out in the rules and regulations of the Australian and International Game Fishing Associations, and anglers are expected to abide by these rules, which do change from time to time in order to keep up with emerging trends. Learn the rules about trace and double construction, then abide by them. Failure to do so could easily cost you a hard-won record or a much sought-after trophy. A double is designed to absorb some of the wear and tear imposed on the working end of the line, and also to allow maximum knot strength for connecting traces or items of terminal tackle. A double is also useful in controlling a fish at boat side during gaffing, noosing, or tagging. Arguably the best and most secure double knot of all, the plait, is also unquestionably the neatest and most professional looking. Unfortunately, it is also reasonably difficult to tie. A poorly executed plait is worse than no double knot at all. So, either take the time to fully master this connection, or learn an easier double knot. This is how a finished plait should look. Note that the turns of line are even and tight. There should be no tendency for the knot to slide or collapse on itself. A good test is to relax pressure on the knot and see if it curls into a crescent or semicircle. Such curling indicates that the wraps have been made good and tight and that the plait is unlikely to fail. A limp, straight plait is likely to slide and bunch. If it doesn't look right, tie it again. Follow these steps to tie a plait, and remember at all times to maintain as much tension as possible on all three tag ends or tails of the knot. It is vital that the plait is started correctly. Take the line from the reel in your left hand and the tag end of the line in your right, making sure the length of the double has been measured. Place the short end under the end from the reel. Turn it back to the center and pull tight. Now, plait the right side over the center, followed by the left side over the center, and so on. It is like normal plaiting in hair. As you plait, you must keep a firm and even pressure on each strand of line. Continue to plait for 5 or 6 centimeters. The heavier the line, the longer the plait required. Finish the plaiting with the short end in the center between the other 2 strands. Now, using the short end, tie a hitch over one strand of the double. Lubricate this hitch with saliva and pull it tight. Next, tie an identical hitch around the other strand. Again, lubricate it with saliva and pull tight. Complete the plait by taking several hitches around both strands at once. Lubricate and pull each hitch tight as you go. Many anglers like to leave 2 or 3 centimeters of tag end hanging from the completed plait. But if 6 to 8 hitches are made, the tag may be trimmed almost flush with no danger of slippage. The spider hitch is a much faster and simpler way of tying a double. Also called the Cairns Quickie, this knot is quite satisfactory in lighter line classes, but rather too bulky beyond the 15-kilo category. It is also less able than the plait to withstand the sudden shocks of a jumping or head-shaking fish. To tie a spider hitch, first make a backhand or throwback loop at the top of a measured length of double. Next, take the doubled strands around your thumb and forefinger 5 or 6 times, working from your knuckles down towards your fingertips, as shown. Holding the line firmly, bring the end of the double through the standing loop and pull, allowing the turns around your thumb and finger to slip off one at a time and come tight, starting with the one nearest the fingertips and ending with the turn nearest your knuckles. Lick the knot to lubricate it, pull tight, and trim the tag end to 1 centimetre or less. There are several other fine knots which may be used for tying doubles, including the popular Bimini twist. Most of these are illustrated in better game fishing books. When it comes to connecting the working end of the double to a swivel, ring or lure, there are once again several choices of connection. However, one knot shines above all others. It is called the uni knot, and may also be used to tie terminals to heavy monofilament traces, or to connect a single strand of line to a hook, swivel or lure when not using a double. To begin with, always ensure that the strands of the double are even before commencing this or any other connection. Then pass the end of the double loop through the eye of the swivel, ring, hook or lure eyelet. Draw the end up about 15 or 20 centimetres and form a reverse hitch towards you. Take the loop end of the double and turn it through the hitch at least 4 times, working away from the swivel. Pull the hitch tight. Lubricate with saliva, then draw the knot back to the swivel. The short tail should be trimmed about 1 or 2 centimetres long. Another popular double-to-terminal connection is the Bimini hitch. To tie this hitch, once again ensure that the strands of the double are even. Next, pass the end of the double through the eye of the swivel and take it down the double about 10 centimetres. Part the strands of the double and take the end back to form a loop, as shown here. Roll the swivel through the loop 5 times. Lubricate the knot with saliva, then pull the swivel toward you, snugging the Bimini hitch down tight. As explained earlier, the very versatile uni knot is perfect for connecting terminal items such as swivels or lures to traces, doubles and so on. However, in certain styles of fishing, a knot tied around the shank of a hook is preferable. This connection is called a snood, a snell or a shank knot. To tie a shank knot, either pass the line through the hook eye, if it is a turned up or turned down eye pattern, or simply lay it alongside the eye if the hook is straight shanked. For convenience, do not allow the tag end to extend beyond the bend of the hook. Now, lay the other end of the trace the opposite way and hold the lines parallel. The barb of the hook is very close here, so care must be taken with the wrap. Wind the line back down the shank 6 to 8 times. The tail of the trace must be kept clear of the loop when it is drawn up. Check that the tail is clear of the loop. Lubricate, then pull tight. Pull both tails to ensure the knot is tight. One problem which occurs when using mono traces and stainless steel hooks is the sharp edges inside the eye of the hook. These rough spots can wear through the mono in a long fight. To overcome this danger, lay a loop of dental floss along the shank of the hook. Wrap one end of the floss 6 or 8 times around the eye of the hook, but not around the mono. Place the wrapping end of the dental floss through the loop at the bottom of the hook. Pull the other piece of floss until the loop is tight. The ends of the dental floss and the trace are then trimmed. The shank knot is also ideal for a 2-hook rig, either close together for lures or spread wide for a bait. Tie the bottom hook with a shank knot as already shown. Next, position your hook either for a lure or bait. Lay the trace parallel, assuming the bottom end is now the tail. Loop the front of the trace around, facing the end forward as shown. Tie another shank knot, taking care to unravel any twist in the loop. As the trace is drawn through, the loop will tighten and lock the knot in position. Trim the tail off the bottom hook. This is how the whole rig should look. Many types of artificial lure may be used in game fishing, either when cast and retrieved, or more commonly, trolled behind a moving boat. Perhaps the most famous of all trolling lures is the Kona head style, with its angled, scooped fiberglass head and fiber, vinyl, or shredded plastic tail or skirt. This pattern works best when trolled at 7 to 10 or 12 knots, at which speed it should swerve, dive and jump in a most enticing manner, spending approximately 2/3 of its time beneath the surface and 1/3 on top. Let's watch how the Kona head swims. Notice how it rolls and dives away before returning splashily to the surface. Troll it too slowly, and the Kona head will lose this alluring action. Too fast, and it will leap wildly from the water, perhaps tumbling and fouling its hooks in the trace. The special high-speed Kona has a much narrower, sharper head, and is often weighted with a lead insert. It will cope with higher trolling speeds, providing its best action at around 9 to 12 or even 14 knots. A pointed nose or flat-headed high speed has virtually no inbuilt action, but does wobble slightly at speed. Fished well back behind the boat, lures such as this will continue to hang in the water and produce fish at speeds of up to 18 knots, more in calm, flat seas. Other lures with heavy, tapered heads work well on rough, windy days. They run a little deeper than the lures we've already looked at, and are very productive on albacore and tuna. A jet head or shower head lure is drilled with holes which cause air bubbles. Let's see one in action. These lures will also cope with a fair turn of speed. One of the most effective marlin and yellowfin lures is the flat-headed or slightly angled pusher style. Though mainly a medium-speed lure, these pushers will handle a reasonable amount of pace if fished well back. They produce a thick, milky smoke trail of bubbly water which really attracts big predators. Finally, there is a wide range of small to medium-sized trolling lures, such as rubber squids, plastic and vinyl fish, lead heads, evil eyes, flies, jigs, minnows, and so-called Christmas trees, all of which are productive on a wide range of pelagics and are especially useful in the capture of striped tuna, frigate mackerel, bonito, and so on, for bait and burley. These smaller lures track fairly straight and will handle a range of speeds from 5 or 6 knots up to as much as 15 knots. One problem with using strong-action lures such as Kona heads, especially on nylon traces, is the wear which occurs where the trace emerges from the lure head. One way to overcome this is to use a special stainless steel spring, or perhaps an empty biro refill. The mono is fed through the spring or tube, which acts as a cushion in the lure head and prevents abrasion. Another mistake is the tendency to over-rig a lure. A lure this size is designed for lines under the 15-kilogram class. A hook this size may fit in the skirt, but is probably too big to be set on light line classes. Use a hook to suit the line class you're using, not the size of the lure. When rigging a small lure on nylon, pass the mono through the lure. Place a crimp and a small piece of stainless steel protector on the mono. Simply feed the line through the eye of the hook, back through the sleeve, and crimp carefully. The trace has protection, and the hook fits within the skirt. The uni-knot is a safe and easy way to connect mono to a brass ring. It may also be used at the hook end of the rig in place of a crimp. Pass the mono through the ring. Bring the line parallel. Take the end back and lay the strands side by side. Twist the end around the first 2 strands 4 times. Then lubricate and slowly draw it up until tight. Grip the brass ring and pull to check that it locks tight. This is how the knot looks, and all you need do is tidy it up by trimming the tag end. Using 49-strand wire on a Kona head will give less drag in the water than other wire styles and will not restrict the lure's action. Feed the wire through the lure and place 2 crimp sleeves on the wire. Pass it through the hook and tie a Flemish eye. To do this, pass the end around the wire twice, then back through the eye of the hook. Draw the eye tight to give a very strong swinging circle. Thread 1 sleeve on and crimp tightly. Place the second sleeve so that it regulates the distance the hook will sit back in the skirt. You may also use glass or plastic beads for this purpose. When rigging two hooks in a lure, they must not overlap. They may face different directions, but no hook is permitted to sit totally outside the skirt. To make up a two-hook lure rig, firstly, rig one hook on a short length of wire with a Flemish eye. Place two more sleeves on the wire and position the second hook, measuring the required distance from the first hook. Tie the second hook on with a Flemish eye. Check to ensure distances are correct before crimping. Thread the wire trace through the lure and connect to the top hook with another Flemish eye and two crimps. Check the position of the hooks when they are pulled up. Naturally, lures may also be rigged wholly on nylon monofilament, using the knots explained earlier, or special mono-crimping sleeves. The choice between wire and nylon is dependent on the area being fished, target species involved, and personal preferences. One of the most successful methods of catching game fish is the use of live and dead baits. Suitable baits for live baiting include yellowtail, slimy mackerel, salmon, mullet, whiting, trevally, and any other small, tough fish which will keep in a live bait tank. Small striped tuna, kingfish, bonito, frigates, albacore, and other tuna species are also ideal, but should be rigged and put back in the water as soon as they are caught, as they will not survive for any length of time in even a large tank. There are several ways to rig a live striped tuna or bonito. One of the best methods is the bridle rig. To execute this rig, have a trace of wire or monofilament prepared with a large straight patterned hook. Make sure the hook is sharp. Tie a length of Dacron, dental floss, or light cord to the bend of the hook, and make several small loops near the end of this strand. Then, pass the end through the eye of a long stainless steel needle. When a striped tuna or similar bait fish is landed, turn it quickly on its back and tuck it under your arm. This tends to stop the little tuna's struggles and facilitates quick rigging. Without wasting a moment, pass the needle above one eye of the bait and through the eye socket, emerging above the other eye. Be sure to avoid puncturing the eyes themselves. As you do this, an assistant should be removing the lure or hook on which the bait fish was caught from its mouth. Finally, place one of the loops in the bridle cord over the point of the big hook, allowing just enough slack so that the hook bend swings freely just clear of the bait's forehead. The bait may now be dropped overboard and spooled astern. The entire process should have taken less than a minute. When fishing an area where sharks, mackerel and wahoo are common, a second shallow hook may be inserted further back, just below the skin. Towing pressure must come from the front hook. A quicker rig than the bridle involves passing the hook through the top jaw of the live bait, as shown here. Live baits may also be trolled slowly or fished from a drifting boat by placing the hook through the back, making sure you don't go below the lateral line. This rig tends to make the bait swim deeper. Dead baits may also be trolled for a wide range of game fish. One of the most popular forms of dead bait is the skip bait, a great producer of big marlin in some areas. To rig a long-lasting skip bait, choose an undamaged small tuna, kingfish, salmon, mullet, or similar bait fish. Ideally, this bait should be fresh, but frozen baits are fine if stored flat and wrapped in plastic or newspaper to prevent freezer burn. Making a neat straight cut from the vent to the pelvic girdle, remove the fish's intestines. Through the gill openings, sever and remove the gills, being careful not to break or cut the throat latch. Now, using a stainless steel needle and light cord, stitch along one side of the stomach, starting at the front. Then stitch back the other side, making a crisscross pattern. Pull the stitches tight and tie off. Next, stitch the head to the body by stitching through the gill cage and out through the fin. Cross over and come through the opposite fin and out through the gill cage. Tie this off also. This stitching stops water passing through the fish, which would cause it to spin. Attach the hook by passing a cord through the eye socket and tying off on top of the head. Push the bait needle through the head and out the bottom jaw. This gives you a tie at the top and the bottom. Make a small cut at the center of the mouth, being careful not to break the jaw. Bring the two lines around and tie a knot into the cut. Finally, tie the hook on tightly. Secure the knot with a couple of half hitches around the hook and trim the line. This is how the skip bait should look when you have finished. And this is how it should look when trolled at about 4 knots. It is vital to watch the action of the skip bait. If trolled too slow, it weaves and spins. And if trolled too fast, it will leap from the water, splash, tumble, and eventually tear to pieces. A rigged swimming mullet is another great producer on a wide range of game fish. This bait is a little more difficult to rig, but it's well worth the effort. First, remove the mullet's intestines by making a neat slit from bent to pelvic fins. Carefully take the gills out through one of the gill arches. Then cut from the ventral fins through the back and slide the knife along the backbone. As you near the tail, cut to the center of the fish. Tilt the knife down and slice through the tail, splitting it in two. Remove the scales from the top of the head to make it easier to push the bait needle through. Push the bait needle from the bottom through the center of the head, between the eyes. Position the hook. Push the hook through to locate the eye under the hole made by the bait needle. Push the single-strand wire trace through the hole and through the eye of the hook. Place a ball sinker on the bottom end of the wire and make a loop in front of the head. Leave about 2 fingers from the nose to the start of the twist. Twist the wire around 6 to 8 times. Finish by rolling to short end 4 or 5 times around the wire. Break the wire off, leaving a neat edge. Place a stitch through the mouth and tie off. Then put a stitch through the gills and tie off. This stops water rushing through the mouth and gills, which would make the bait spin. Finally, break the backbone. This is how the swimming mullet should look when you have finished. And this is how it looks when trolled at between 3 and 6 knots. A heavier sinker will make the mullet swim deeper, if so desired. Dead baits are also the first choice of most shark anglers. The best rig for sharks is a simple but effective one. It employs 2 big sharp hooks rigged on heavy wire. The hooks should be spaced far enough apart to suit the dimensions of the bait being used. Place the first hook up through both jaws of the bait, keeping it quite close to the front of the bait's mouth. Next, leaving enough slack in the wire between the hooks so that the bait is not bent, slip the trailing hook into the meat of the bait's back as shown. Don't go too deep. Once a game fish is hooked, it must be fought or played, using the reel's drag or clutch, the flex of the rod, and, where necessary, the boat. Most big fish taken on light line must be followed with the boat to prevent excessive line loss. Contrary to popular opinion, this is not unsporting. Few of the fish on the current national and world record charts would have been landed without at least some assistance from the boat. When a fish has been played close to the boat, a decision should be made as to whether it will be tagged and released or killed and taken for weighing. These days there is a growing trend amongst game fishermen towards tag and release in order to preserve dwindling fish stocks and to add to our store of knowledge about these wonderful fish. Large fish should be tagged in the water using a 2-meter-long tag pole. The tag fits in the metal tube at the end like this. You may use either a plastic-tipped or a metal-tipped tag, but different tag applicators are required for each. The metal tags are better suited to very big fish, especially marlin and sharks. The tag should be jabbed into the fish's shoulder area, or the muscle beneath its second dorsal fin. Placement is most important with the plastic tip tags, as these should lock into the roots of a fin for best results. The trace may then be cut to free the tagged fish. Small fish are best lifted from the water and tagged, before being dehooked and gently released. Avoid tagging fish much below about 2 kilos in weight. Fill in the information card supplied with the tag immediately after releasing the fish and drop it in the post at your earliest convenience. Fish to be taken and killed may be netted, gaffed, or noosed. In many cases, this is best facilitated by first tracing the fish. In other words, having a fellow crew member take hold of the trace and steady the fish alongside. In most cases, it is advisable for this traceman to wear gloves. To gaff a fish, the hook of the gaff should be placed over the top of the fish, somewhere near the head, and pulled home smoothly but strongly. Try to do this just before the fish's back breaks through the surface. Big active fish may require 2 or even 3 gaffs, and perhaps a tail rope or noose as well. Don't tackle such fish until you acquire the skills and experience needed to do so. These skills are best sharpened on smaller, more manageable targets. If in doubt about your ability to handle a really large or dangerous quarry, tag it and cut the trace. Remember, a tag and release is held in at least as much regard these days as a dead fish on the weighing gantry. Or, if assistance is available from a nearby fisho, seek help and advice to maintain safety.